Welcome to Policy Chats, the official podcast of the School of Public Policy at the University of California, Riverside. I'm your host, Rachel Strausman. Join me and my classmates as we learn about potential policy solutions for today's biggest societal challenges. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chief Executive Officer Fajardo. We're truly excited to have you on the Policy Chats podcast. As the CEO of Feeding America Riverside San Bernardino, for these past 2 years, you have had such an impact on the organization. Your entire story is so inspiring. The first in your family to get a bachelor's degree, and you didn't stop there. You went to grad school afterwards. And CEO not only at 27 years old, but also the second only woman to serve in that role. And you started at such a complicated time right after the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So serving the nearly 5 million people of the Inland Empire as the largest hunger relief organization in the region. Feeding America Riverside San Bernardino distributes over 2.7 million pounds of food per month and partners with over 250 local nonprofit organizations. So today we are eager to dive into your experiences working in the nonprofit world, tackling big issues such as food insecurity, and to explore the various policies that impact work like yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so nice. It sounds so good when you compile it all, so appreciate that.
Of course, and thank you. So getting right into our first question, can you tell us about Feeding America Riverside San Bernardino and the unique challenges of addressing food insecurity in such a vast and diverse region as ours?
Yeah, so at Feeding America Riverside San Bernardino, our mission is to alleviate hunger. It's exactly what it sounds like. So our goal is really just to get food to communities that don't have a lot of access to it. We cover a huge region, so there's lots of different needs. You'd be surprised how many people actually experience food insecurity and what these people look like. Oftentimes, it's people that look like you and I. It's people in average neighborhoods just trying to get to their next payday. While sometimes it is homeless people, it's also just a lot of regular people that have hit hard times. Sometimes it's unexpected medical expenses. Sometimes it's school expenses. Sudden job loss, or just times like this where it's the holidays. It's hard for people to keep up with trying to keep that excitement alive while also keeping food on the table. So often the people that I experience meeting, it's people that just would be a neighbor of mine. In the Inland Empire, we also have lots of food desert regions. You see it on your way to Vegas. There's lots of rural areas. People don't often think about how the families that live in those areas get food. Sometimes their closest Jack-in-a-Box is closer than the grocery store. And it's cheaper to just pick up a meal for a couple dollars than to buy, food with some real substance and nutrition value. So those are some of the challenges that the community faces. What we do is we work with local distribution centers to get food into our warehouse and out to the community. These warehouses, we have tons of them in the Inland Empire, lots of distribution centers. When items get too close to the sell-by date, or maybe they had an unexpected shipment of something come in, they got to keep stuff moving. So they can donate that to us. They can use that as an extended tax write-off. And then for us, we're able to get it to communities that need it. While we do have about a dozen of our own hunger relief programs, we work with a network of 250 other nonprofits to get food out to the community. So these would be neighborhood pantries, after-school programs, senior centers, church monthly drive-through distributions. Lots of different nonprofits have different programs to help people with that are facing hunger. They come to us to pick up that food, and then they get it out to the community in a way that makes the most sense for their community. So like I mentioned, some of them do drive-through distributions. Some of them might have a walk-up pantry. Some of them do ongoing food distributions. Some of them do just if you ask for it, they'll provide it to you. The one thing they all have in common, though, is they have to provide it at no cost to the community. That's one of the stipulations with being a partner of us. We don't provide a cost to the food, so they can't either. So we have to make sure that anybody that's coming through us is getting food at no cost.
Thank you so much. That's a great comprehensive kind of introduction into Feeding America, Riverside, San Bernardino, and everything that you all do. I think you mentioned something very interesting towards the beginning about how, food insecurity isn't just about being homeless or being, I think what the boxes that people would traditionally view people who are food insecure as. Do you find that it's difficult to reach populations due to the stigma of being food insecure and the kind of complicated nature of it, where people might not realize that they do actually fit into that category and could receive help?
Yeah, we actually see that a lot with people needing SNAP benefits. Often the stigma with that is people don't want to take resources from somebody else. That's what we hear often is, I don't need it. There's probably somebody who needs it more than I do. But what they don't realize is there's this huge bucket of funding set aside for people in these income brackets, and you are not taking from somebody who doesn't have it. If anything, we want you to apply for it so we can show what the need is and continue to get funding towards SNAP benefits. But it's complicated when people are like, no, like I'm fine. I'm sure there's somebody that needs it more when that money's set aside for them. We also get people that are just intimidated by the program. Oftentimes, if there are language barriers, people don't want to request assistance because the application process might be a little bit complicated for them to understand. And then people just don't want to have an EBT card. I think that embarrasses some people too. So there's lots of stigmas. We mostly see it with SNAP. Sometimes we see it with other programs as well. But we try to make it as welcoming and approachable for anybody that needs food assistance. And we try to keep it as private as they want it to be.
So just to follow up on your ways, like keeping it private and having these people that are food insecure, are there any other ways that you are reaching out to them to let them know that, there's brackets for you, so you don't have to someone else needed more than me. So is there any ways that you and your organization is reaching out to those people in need?
We certainly try to. So all of our information is pretty public, so people can go to our website and always look up that information. We try to post stuff on social media as well. We also do quarterly trainings for our nonprofits who would like to start offering SNAP assistance that maybe aren't as well versed in it. So that way when they're out in the community and they experience meeting somebody that might qualify for it, they can do that pre-screening of them and pass it on to us so we can help them get their application in. So we're always trying to expand our reach by educating our partners so they can at least do that initial process as they're, doing their programs. What's great about a lot of our nonprofit partners is even though they have a food program, they often have other really vital programs to the community. It might be couples counseling. It might be alcohol and drug related counseling. Sometimes it's clothing assistance or job assistance. They offer a lot of other support services. So if they see somebody or encounter somebody that is coming to them maybe for job assistance, they can always do that pre-screening for SNAP assistance as well, and we can see if we can get them the help through that program. So we try to work through our partners the most just because they have their hands in everything and they're experts in a lot of areas in their immediate community.
Wow, that's very interesting that you work with a lot of partners, as you said. And just to move on, so we know that the Inland Empire is a industrialized zone area. So how do the logistics and the Inland Empire industrialized landscape shape your efforts in contributing to these your community and these people?
Yeah, so I would say when it comes to the amount of warehouses in the area, depending on who you ask, you might get different answers on whether this is a good thing to the community. But from the food bank perspective, this is really beneficial to us because we have so many distribution centers in the area. Oftentimes, if they need to get rid of product quickly, we're their first choice for that, which is great. We're actually one of very few of the 200 Feeding America food banks that really doesn't purchase a whole lot of food. We have so much in the Inland Empire, in fact, that we're able to give some to San Diego or LA County or Orange County because they're all primarily purchasing food. So when we have, let's say, a huge Amazon order, but it's all snacks and our warehouse is already full of snacks, we can offer it to them. So that way they don't have to purchase a whole lot of that next time. So I would say from the food bank perspective, very, very beneficial to us. One of the ways that we also get food from these warehouses is sometimes, let's say there's a warehouse that's dropping off a ton of pallets of food to a local Target store. Target receives it and they say these pallets look kind of crushed. They don't look as pretty as some of the other ones, so they can reject it. If they reject it, a lot of the times those drivers from those distribution centers have to return their truck empty. So they have to drop it off somewhere before they can return back to their distribution center. So that's when they start calling around, seeing what food banks or food organizations can take it. If we can take it that day and it's early enough in the day where we can receive it and input it, we'll take it. So that's one reason why we might be getting some of the food donations in the area.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting to hear about like all the different partners and how like they donate differently. But just to shift gears a little bit, you said from the perspective of the food bank, it's a really good thing. How about like from the sustainability perspective? So we all know that the regions in industrial growth raises sustainability concerns. How does the food bank ensures like its operations, especially the food transportation and the storage, remain like sustainably, like environmentally sustainable?
Well, I would say operating a food bank, all of our work is kind of tied to sustainability. We're giving food that second chance to get out to the community before it goes to the landfill. Not sure if you guys are familiar with SB 1383, huge bill that went into effect a couple years ago, and I'm sure you guys know more about it than I do. But these grocery stores, retail stores have to donate that product to a food rescue organization before they can give it to the landfill. Thankfully, we're that food rescue organization, so we get lots of food from these stores before it goes to the landfill, so it hopefully doesn't make its way to landfill. So that's one way we are kind of focused on sustainability, and we provide that opportunity is because we can take that food, we can distribute it to families that need it before it ever gets thrown away.
Truth, accuracy, fairness, curiosity. These are the pillars of journalism and of higher education. At the Wall Street Journal, we pride ourselves on being a trusted and essential resource. The Wall Street Journal is partnered with the University of California, Riverside to provide your campus an unparalleled access to essentials to be prepared academically, professionally, and personally. Students get full access to WSJ News, curated newsletters, challenges, podcasts, and documentary series to help stay up to date. Activate your school-sponsored subscription today at wsj.com/UC Riverside.
That's amazing. I think some of the greatest policies we've heard about on the podcast are ones that focus on tackling one issue, but by doing so, help benefit so many others, like sustainability, reducing waste. So kind of going more into different options for ways to tackle so many different things. You all have a lot of great collaborations, one of which is the Nourish Now program. So can you share how partnerships with companies like Amazon Fresh and DoorDash have transformed food distribution?
Yes. So I'll backtrack a little bit to talk about Nourish Now because that program itself has evolved so much since it launched almost 5 years ago now. I can't believe that's how long it was since COVID started already.
Wow.
But we started it in March 2020 because of people needing food assistance. So Nourish Now is a home delivery program. At the time when it started, we had a lot of people reaching out to us because they were unable to leave their homes. Their caregivers could no longer drive to them, or they just didn't have a reliable source of transportation anymore. We received an influx of calls for that. At the time, we also had a lot of volunteers that were saying, just lost my job, I'm trying to find something to do. Can I just volunteer with you guys so I can, keep something on my resume, keep myself busy? So we had a lot of volunteers that wanted to help us out. But at that time, we were all keeping distance. We couldn't have volunteers in our warehouse. We had very limited staff, and we kind of needed to keep ourselves isolated so we can continue our mission. We weren't one of those businesses that could be remote because a lot of what we do is focused on warehouse and food distribution. And we were considered one of those critical businesses that was expected to stay open. So we just couldn't take volunteers in out of abundance of precaution. So we started to ask our volunteers if they would be willing to do home deliveries for us. We had these food boxes. We had people that needed them but couldn't get to our warehouse. And thankfully, a lot of our volunteers wanted to do these food distributions. So us being a nonprofit, we're used to being under-resourced, understaffed. So we just put together a Google Sheets and said, we'll just put in all of the requests that are coming in. Volunteers, here's a link to the Google Sheet. Just sign up next to the one that you want to complete. When you're done, just mark it off, done. Super simple, nothing fancy. We just kind of pushed out that link and said, you guys fill it out if you need something. You guys complete it if you can. And we had lots of volunteers that were happy to do 10, 15 deliveries. So they would come, they would fill up their car with a bunch of boxes, and they would have their route for the day, and they would just do a bunch of deliveries. Seemed to work out for a while. Eventually, DoorDash was starting to work with food banks, and they said, why don't we have our DoorDash drivers complete some of these deliveries for you? They're already on this platform. We have a platform developed for these drivers to specifically pick up food and drop it off. So why don't we add food banks to that? So that worked out great for a while. There were some challenges though. So with DoorDash, they said we can deliver within 10 miles to the food bank. The Inland Empire is a lot bigger than 10 miles, so they let us create additional hubs with some of our nonprofit partners, so that way we can have a bunch of hubs throughout the Inland Empire. If somebody needs food, we can, set the location for the hub that's in Marietta or Barstow, and then we can go within 10 miles to those hubs. So that was a way that we were able to expand reach. And then eventually that program they realized that it was not a sustainable model for them to be able to have all these food banks doing these free deliveries and having these drivers not really benefit from it. So they started to tack on a fee to that, so that way they could cover their costs at least, which makes sense. They're a business too. But for us as a nonprofit who had this free program for so long, it was kind of like, well, we didn't budget for that. We don't have grants for that now. So we kind of kept it on the back burner of if we absolutely need it for a delivery, we're just going to keep this here. It's a great program, just not sustainable for us right now with grant funding. So Amazon came out, and being, big Amazon they said, we can do it, and we'll do it within 20 miles. So they said they kind of run it a little bit differently. Like DoorDash, you can do kind of one-off ones. With Amazon, they say, we'll pick it up once a week. We want a list of everyone you have, and then all of the food boxes, and then we'll take care of it. So it's a little bit different than the way DoorDash did it. They can do it within 20 miles, but we're not able to currently create different hubs for it. So we only have our one center. So we use both partnerships right now to meet the needs of the community. If those partnerships aren't beneficial to the community we're trying to reach, then we have volunteers take those. We also use our drivers on staff. If they're already going out to drop off food, we'll give them those extra food boxes so they can kind of do that on their route as well. So we use a lot of resources to make home deliveries possible, but even today we're distributing to about 500 homebound residents every month. So still continues even long past the pandemic.
Wow, that's amazing that with the unique and unprecedented challenges COVID brought, you were able to still serve your community, and so many volunteers, stepped up to make that happen before some of these partnerships. I'm curious, even though the Inland Empire is very heavily populated, with some of those more less densely populated areas farther out on the edges of the Inland Empire, how do you reach those community members who it might not be easy for them to get to a food bank, but also on the other end, it's not the easiest for a staff member or a volunteer to go ahead and reach them as well?
It's a great question. It is so difficult, and if anybody has ways to make it better, I'm all open ears, because we have not figured out areas for us to reach those populations that make sense. We have sometimes our drivers going all the way to Trona, which is the very end of the state border, not San Diego border, like the other way. I think it's Arizona or Nevada state border. It's a little bit further. Obviously, I didn't go to school for geography, but we have our drivers going out there, or we have our staff members going out there, and it really just takes a whole day. It's like going to literally state line, like before you get to Vegas, it's going that drive to do a home delivery and then coming back to our warehouse in Riverside. So it's difficult. We do have one distribution, and I can't remember the city that it's in, but it's also the same thing. It takes our driver a full day, a full Saturday to go out there, drop off those pallets of food, and then come back, and it's really the only delivery he's done all day, because that's the only the only distribution we have that way, and that community needs it. It's also challenging in some areas where there's fires or where there's snow. Our drivers go to Big Bear frequently, and this season it's snowing. Taking a big truck up there is a little challenging, but those people need food as well, and they're in our service area, so we do it. Oftentimes we can also partner with other Feeding America food banks. So I think of this one food bank. They were also, I think, in maybe Arizona or Nevada, but they had reached out because there was a nonprofit that was located in one of those rural areas, and they said, they're in your service area, but we can drive to them. Like, we can give them resources. Is it okay if we partner with them? For us, it makes the most sense too, even though we have these service area boundaries. Like, if it makes sense for them to work together and that's just a natural partnership, there's no need for us to force it and make it work when coming to Riverside doesn't make sense for them to run their program. So we can also work together with other Feeding America food banks to make that happen. Our goal is really just to strengthen the programs that we have, and really just put us out of business. We want to be able to ensure that families in this community have all the resources they need so they don't have to come to a food bank for additional assistance. And I think once we've reached that point of families being able to have the food that they need, we can focus more on what we're giving them, focus on nutritional value, cultural preferences, dietary preferences, and make sure that we can be intentional beyond just let's give them food just to get through a few days. So I see that being more of the direction that we would take within serving the region.
That's a very inspiring and interesting thing that your goal is to no longer need to have a Feeding America. How do you balance that, making sure that you're accommodating like immediate needs while promoting long-term like food insecurity benefits?
Yeah, so this is actually tied to our current strategic plan that we just started. So 2024 through 2027, we're really going to be focused on making that shift from basic necessities to being more of a nutrition bank instead of a food bank. One of the ways that we're doing that is actually in January, we'll be opening up our Choice Pantry. This will be located on our facility, our administrative offices. It's going to be kind of like a mini grocery store. So people that come to us for food assistance, rather than getting a standard food box with mixed product, basic stuff like oatmeal and rice, they'll be able to shop in our little store for the things that they want and need that would meet their dietary preferences, that would meet their cultural preferences. And hopefully it'll help us be able to educate people on how to mix some of these food products to make a meal that they would enjoy, and give people choice, give them that respect that they deserve when they're seeking food assistance. Oftentimes when we give a standard food box, we're not taking into account what people's preferences are, and what their restrictions are, and how this also contributes to waste. If we're giving them a box of rice and grains and oatmeal and they're a diabetic and can't have a lot of the high carb stuff, we aren't fulfilling our mission effectively. So that stuff is just going to go to waste anyway. So it's kind of a waste on our side to spend money and spend volunteer time on building these resources if it's not what the community needs. So this will help us reduce waste, educate the community, and really focus on encouraging people to have these healthy food items. What's great about the pantry is that it's going to have refrigerated product, frozen product, fresh veggies, and lots of different spices and seasonings that people can choose from to make a dish that they're actually going to enjoy. Coupled with the Choice Pantry, sorry, this is a long-winded answer. Coupled with the Choice Pantry in our facility, so we bought this facility about a year ago. So our goal was really to focus on the community when we established this facility. So in addition to the pantry, we have a learning center in this facility. The days that we have the pantry open, our goal is to have different organizations tabling in the learning center so people that come to get their food assistance can also be connected to other resources in the community, whether that's therapy or the job assistance, housing assistance, all of those great resources that other nonprofits in the area are offering. We're hoping that if we can connect people to these resources in the community, we can get them out of a point of need. So we know that food insecurity is often a result of other things going on in their life, like maybe they don't have a job that can help them pay the bills. So if we can help them with their resume, help them get a job, then maybe they won't need these food commodities. So that is our goal, is to kind of get people actually out of the food system and provide them the resources that are going to be beneficial to getting them out of it.
Wow, it's super interesting how you are like adapting and shifting to like people's need, not just like being like a traditional like food bank. So just to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned like your programs. Can you tell me a little bit more about like the Fresh Start Pantry initiative and how it aims to improve like food accessibility, especially for the underserved communities?
Yes, so that is the program that I just mentioned. It's the Fresh Start Pantry by Goodman. Goodman is the sponsor that is helping us provide that to the community, which we're really grateful for. So with the funds that we're receiving from them, we're also going to be able to purchase food. I mentioned that we're a food bank that often relies on donations from the community, but when we have grants that allow us to purchase food, we can be very selective in what we're receiving and what we're giving out to the communities. So it's going to allow us to be very intentional with our approach. So really excited about that. In addition to those coming for food assistance through our Choice Pantry, we'll also be offering CalFresh assistance. So if they need a regular ongoing source of food, we can help get them connected to those resources.
That's amazing that you're providing, I think the term is like wraparound services, truly everything to help them succeed in everything they may be struggling with, even if it's not just food insecurity. And that way it's all there and accessible for them.
Yeah.
Kind of getting more into the policy of things. Food insecurity is deeply affected by policy. And there are a lot of different federal and state and local policies that can help provide resources. So which bills, and I know you mentioned some of them earlier, or legislative efforts like AB 1383 or the Farm Bill have made the most significant impact on your work?
I would say the Farm Bill places the most emphasis on food insecurity. In addition to what we do, it focuses on the agricultural side of things and farmers as well, getting farmers to have benefits as well, whether it's getting paid appropriately for the work that they're doing. But there are some areas in there that encourages collaboration in some ways. So for instance, we might get grants that are very selective, saying we want you to buy from local farmers. So that way it gets us the food that we need, but also supports them as well. It's also the bill that a lot of these SNAP programs are going through. So it kind of is an all-encompassing of areas that relate to us, especially related to SNAP benefits, ongoing benefits, and what they look like for the family on the receiving end.
Wow. So speaking of bills, what bills and policy, what bills and policy changes are you currently like advocating for, and how would they address the underlying cause of food insecurity?
Yeah, so there are numerous bills right now, state, local, federal, all related to SNAP. And those would be ones that we are focused on. There was one that I saw recently, and forgive me because I don't know the name of it because there are a million of them, and I bless you guys for knowing these better than I do. But there was one I saw recently that was related to college campuses and SNAP benefits and making sure that every college campus has at least one place on the campus where EBT benefits are accepted. I thought that was a really cool one, especially if every school had that. I think that would be so beneficial, especially with the need amongst college students. We often say it, and it's often said jokingly about college students eating ramen, but there is so much truth to that. So I think that would be really beneficial if we can help people connect to those benefits. And if there was somewhere where they could spend those benefits on campus, I think that would be beautiful.
Wow, thank you for your answer. And just a follow-up on that, like, what are like the challenges and barriers do you face when when you advocate for these bills to be like passed?
Yeah, so I mean, I can say from the local level, we are not a big food bank, so we don't have any staff that's specifically dedicated to advocacy. There are some food banks in other states where they have teams of people that are doing a lot of the advocacy work, but we really rely on the California Association of Food Banks to do a lot of the advocating on our behalf. So they do a lot of the real policy work, and they just ask us to support them. They focus on educating us on those and let us know at the local level what we can do to push these messages out. So they're doing a lot of the work, and I don't want to speak to the work that they're doing because I'm really not a part of it. But yeah, there's a lot being done at the association that helps us food banks here in California.
That's amazing that there's all these different types of partnerships that you participate in to make sure that you can serve your communities as much as possible. As we kind of close off, you mentioned something that I think is very important to highlight, CalFresh eligibility for college students. And even outside of California, I know that SNAP benefits for college students can be very complicated. The process to apply is already difficult to begin with. I know that a lot of places tell you that you technically don't qualify as a college student, which isn't entirely true. And then there's a lot of requirements, meeting the work requirement. And of course, college food insecurity has a lot of negative effects. Students who are food insecure in college are less likely to have a social life, or as large of a social life, less likely to perform as well academically, which affects their graduation and so on. What changes would you like to see, or your organization or other organizations, to better support this demographic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I kind of answered it right now when I had mentioned about having the opportunity for students to use EBT benefits on campus. Aside from that, there's a lot of barriers for anybody that's even getting SNAP assistance or even trying to get it. Oftentimes too, which we've seen since the pandemic now that it's not really considered a big hunger problem anymore. People that are currently qualifying for the program, their benefits are so minuscule. It's not enough to really put food on the table for their families. So it seems like there's just so many barriers to, even if you qualify for it, which I would say by the time you qualify for it, you're in a real situation of need. Having 20, 30, 40 extra bucks a month is not enough to support yourself. It doesn't get you very far in 2024. So I would say there are many challenges related to SNAP. From a food bank perspective, it's really difficult to hear these stories and then see, okay, great, we got you benefits, and it's like $40, really? So I don't know. I think there's still a lot of work to be done beyond the SNAP program, but that's kind of why food banks are here and why we have these partnerships. So those that maybe don't qualify for benefits, they can still get an ongoing source of food, whether through us or through any of our partner programs in the community.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote from one of our past podcast guests a couple months ago, Jennifer Polka, who worked a lot in government and kind of like the more digital side of government. And something she says is paperwork favors the powerful. Like all of these complicated processes that you have to go through just to even see if you're eligible. They're long, they can be confusing. Some of them require, and these are for different types of government benefits, but sometimes you have to drive to certain locations or have certain calls with people, and it just, the cost of doing that adds up so much. And then once you receive the benefits, like you're saying, are they even sufficient to create, to make all that time worth it?
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a policy challenge that is not only related to food insecurity, but definitely affects a lot of programs. But with that, thank you so much for joining us today. It was amazing to talk about all the different ways that Feeding America Riverside San Bernardino has great partnerships with a variety of different organizations in the community, the ways that you help tackle issues beyond food insecurity, including food waste, sustainability, and all of just overall the services that you provide to make sure that at the end of the day, organizations like yours don't need to exist and people can have long-term sustainable food security and not have to rely on resources anymore. So thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an honor to speak with you, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
This podcast is a production of the UC Riverside School of Public Policy, and our theme music was produced by Veer Sinha. For the latest updates on the School of Public Policy, be sure to check us out at UCR_SPP on Instagram, or for more episodes and content, visit our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel Strausman. Till next time.